Hey. This is Dr. Kid again. And of course, we're dealing with Monday shake up time. Good to have you on board with us again. Okay. It's always good to be here. Always good to see you. This is the shake up. You know how it goes. You shake it up because if you don't, all the good stuff just settle at the bottom and you're just drinking just clear liquid. But we want to give you more than just clear liquid on these shows. All right. So I just want to thank you for just hanging in there with us. We will have a good show tonight. And tonight I'm going to be running solo because I had started something about grief, and I want to continue that because that's a very important subject matter for a lot of people, and we'll get into that when we open up. But listen, thank you again, those of you that are online. I want you to do what I want you to share. Okay, so that you can, so that others can get to be a part of this shakeup. So, and of course, as we go down through this program this evening, I want you to, as always, put your comments online so that it will break up the monotony of me just talking with you. Then I can get to respond to some of what you are saying, okay? And if you would like to be a part of the show, just contact my team at Dr. Kit Speaks at gmail.com. Dr. Kit Speaks at gmail.com. We'll get you on the show. And we'd like to have you, of course, on camera, but if you'd rather just be in the background, just chilling, that's okay, off camera, because it's not what you look like that's important. It's what you say, okay? So we want you to be very, to be very um, comfortable in whichever posture you take. All right, and then also, we want you to do what? We want you to share, like, follow, share, subscribe. You got to share this thing to everybody. So you start by like and follow, share, and subscribe, of course, to the podcast, and just share it with your family and your friends, and just put it out there on blast, however you want to. And that will make sure that we have a continued longevity in the lifeline of this program, because we do have good info that we want to pass on to you. Okay. All right. So enough said. We're gonna get started and jump right into our continued discussion on grief. Discussion on grief. And we've this is week 3. We talked about what grief looks like, some of the causes of grief. We've looked at that, and we're going to be looking tonight at an important component of grief, or that leads to grief. Okay, and it's called attachment, dependency, and grief. Attachment, dependency, and grief. All right, it's not just, well, the person is not available. There are some things that we need to consider. And so we're going to pull up the first slide right about now, and and talk about attachment. Well, what is attachment? We're talking about emotional attachment, physical attachment. We're talking about all of those things, So I'm hoping that we can get to some of those as we go down through this thing. The phenomenon of attachment can be understood by the behavior of a newborn baby or a puppy. Listen, if you ever had a newborn baby, listen, if you're a parent, you had a newborn baby someplace along the line. It just didn't come out Cabbage Patch. Those things are not even real anymore. So we've had this attachment, and I remember when we were married, our first child was coming along, and after my wife worked for 3 years after we were married, we didn't have to, but she was in school, and we put off having children And, I said this before, and I never will forget this. When she was ready to, to start the family, she didn't say, I want to get pregnant. She didn't say, I want to start a family. What she said was, I am ready to be a mother. Now, at that time when she said that, before she said that, she had been thinking about that for some time, of course. And then she just unloaded it on me and said, hey, listen, I'm ready to be a mother. Now, maternally, that is a new experience. So she's beginning to do it, attach herself to the idea of being a mother. And and so going down through that path, she been thinking about it, feeling about it. And so when she got pregnant, of course she's beginning to attach and bond herself to this little baby starter, neonatal, baby inside of her. She started to attach herself to the zygote. That's what they call it. And as the baby grew, the attachment grew. Not only the growing attachment to this little person that's growing inside of her, but there is a change in her attaching herself to the whole idea of motherhood, parenting, and everything that goes along with it. So the phenomenon then is like a young child. And when the child is born, the child is in the most dependent stage. And so there is a strong attachment between mother and father, in particular, mother and child. I mean, but father comes inside there somewhere, because somehow and at some point, father is not just an addendum, an attachment to this whole parenting piece. The father now has a particular important role that he must play. But the attachment piece now says mother and child is bonding, especially if you nurse the child, then the attachment is even stronger because there is this skin to skin, flesh to flesh, and it's the body warmth, and it's the joy of feeding, and it's the joy of being fed. And all of these create a certain kind of attachment, a deep bonding, between the mother and the child. It's the same thing for a little puppy. A puppy, is very dependent on the owner to take care of it and to provide for all of its needs. And so this newborn child, then, as this child is going along the growth and developmental continuum, the attachment is becoming more consolidated, and getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and stronger and stronger and stronger in this. And so the attachment comes with dependency also. We'll talk about it in a moment. All right, so let's move on now to slide number 2. And then we're going to take a look at another part of what we're talking about. Attachment, as they grow and individuate, this is the child now. And relationships are like that too. New relationships, and that can grow into strong relationships. And like all relationships, there is some kind of fragility and a testing time to see, is it safe? Can it be a trusting relationship, as they grow? So as they grow and individuate, that is to become their own person, okay, and widen their radius of self-actualization, when they can begin to do things for themselves. It's like this. And if you've had children, you've seen this, okay, where a child will spend some time in his room, his or her room, and then come on back out after about 5 or 10 minutes and go jump on mama, grab mama around the leg. Mama's in the kitchen, this is a little toddler, right? And, just stay there and then go on back in. Now, what's happening here is this, they don't have enough of themselves inside themselves to have a continued sense of attachment, because without the attachment, there is like a fear that can come over this child, and the child can go into anxiety. I can't find my mama. Where's my mama at? Why? Why do you not need your mother? Because I need to be attached to her so that I can feel safe. And that same thing happens when we develop relationships with adult people. They will likely return. This is what I'm talking about. The returning, and when the child moves away from the mother, and they're coming back, they come back to refuel, emotionally refuel, because when they are away from mother, they use up all of the emotional fuel that they have, and they go, oops, I don't know where my mother is, so I need to go back and refuel. And we all do that in all of our relationships, even as adults. We do that when we attach ourselves to certain people, anybody, and develop a meaningful relationship, and that person is not available. Here is how we refuel. We refuel by doing this. See this thing here? It's a phone. We pick up our phone and we call this person, and we are in the refueling mode now. Why? We are saying, I have used up all of my absences from you, and I need you to be a part of my life now, so I can see you, touch you, feel you, hear you again, so that I can feel the way I want to feel. I can feel like I'm not alone. I can feel that somebody cares about me. I can feel that there is somebody out there who can understand me. So we're going through this refueling stage. And the more we refuel, and back and forth, the deeper we sand the quality of our relationship deep into the soil. All right, deep into the soil, into our emotional soil. So we're still talking about attachment. Now, why is that important? Attachment simply says that the deeper the attachment, okay, the deeper the pain when that person is not available. Yeah. So this attachment piece then is important, because when that person is not available, we basically lose the piece of ourselves that we attached to this person, and this person is no longer available to us. It means that the part of us that we attach to them, okay, is no longer available to us either. So when it comes to grieving, we're not just grieving the loss of the unavailability of the other person, we're also grieving the part of ourselves that is not available to us, so that we can function as well as we want to. Now, so we're gonna go on to our next slide, and see what we're looking at here in terms of this. Okay, it says when the desired object is unavailable, the youngster can go through bouts, and this happens to us too. Uh, it also happens when we know we have elderly parents or elderly relatives too. And when the caregiver is not available, it can drive the dependent person into feelings of fear. What is going to happen to me if this person is not here? Now, we're talking about degree of a dependency as well as attachment. What's going to happen to me if this person is not here? And so we have caretaker and caretakee attachment, and the bonding that happens there, and the fear when one is not available. It drives us into anxiety. We become anxious, and we start worrying about what is going to happen. Now we're tapping into our own mortality, our morbidity, our sickness that can drive it. I need that person to be here. And when it comes down to it, I've been attached to this person for so long, and this person is no longer available to me for whatever reason. It can take me into things like displacement. I feel displaced, out of place, because of the importance that this person has in my life, and they are no longer available to me. somewhat some instability, maybe even feelings of abandonment, and compromised safety and emotional protest. This emotional protest, it is something very real because this thing here saying I can protest against the feeling that I'm having and not turn it onto the person that is unavailable. Because if I turn it onto the person who is unavailable, I'm further pushing them away from me. Because let me tell you this, grief is not just about death. Grief is the absence of people who are alive and well, who are not available to you. Okay. So it's not just about death. Giving away to the departure from a desired state of well-being when the person is not available. You don't have that desired state of well-being that you're looking for. You don't have that, and so it can drive you into a state like I say, fear, anxiety, displacement, feeling abandoned along the way. All right, so we're going to move on now to our next slide. And it says here, when the object becomes unavailability, the youngster can experience fear, anxiety. I went down through that already. Grief experience. Let me go down to the next bullet point down here then. And it says, oh, let me go back up there. Abandonment can produce lack of stability, compromised safety, and emotional protest in search of a systemic homeostasis or balance. We're always looking for balance because when we attach ourselves to people, they give us a sense of balance that we don't have. It doesn't mean that we are not a whole person. It simply means that we bring people into our lives to perform a specific physical, biopsychosocial function. And we need them to be available to us at all times so that we can feel well. We have this balance that we're looking for. And so the grief experience represents a departure from this normalcy, this homeostasis that we're looking for across the board. Don't just focus on death. I think we have been doing that for a long time, and we need to get away from thinking that that is just what it's all about. No, it is the absence of anything or anyone that is so meaningful to us that they hold a prominent and important part in our lives to the point of impacting our well-being when they're not available, and improving our well-being when they are available, for us to activate our dependency on them. All right. So it's very important that we understand that, and that it's not just about the loss of loved ones when someone dies. We don't tend to talk, and I keep repeating it, we don't tend to talk about this grieving process unless it is related to death. And so when we go down through that, we rob ourselves, if we think it's only about death, we rob ourselves of developing a willingness to express our sense of loss and our feelings of loss, and really become absorbed in the grief process, because we are saying that it was, and other people may say to you, well, it was just a job. Oh, I know it was a car. We can always buy another car. And it seems to me that, and a lot of times when these things happen, we go into the replacement mode. We can always replace, but how do you replace the quality of the interpersonal relationship that you had with somebody that was so meaningful to you? That person that you can call, depend on, at 2:00 in the morning, 2:00 at any time. You pick up the phone and they never ask you, what do you want now? They are always willing to give you something, share of themselves, which gives you a sense of importance. Somebody out there taking the time to understand me and to love me. Okay. So it's important then that we do this. And sometimes when the person becomes unavailable to us, it creates so much pain that we basically convince ourselves that relationships may not be or deep relationships may not be the best for us. Why? Because every time I attach myself to a person, to this person, what happens here is that there is the possibility of a loss. And every loss then becomes painful and unearthing or adding to the quality of the loss that I've experienced before. So it's important that we understand that when we are going into a relationship that of that quality. And let me just say this here, we cannot not have a relationship. We hear people say, well, it's a relationship. It's a relationship. Of course it's a relationship. You cannot not have a relationship with anybody. you know uh, we have relationships with people we don't know just by virtue of the fact that we are human. We have a relationship with untold billions of people who are human just because. I think when people say we need a relationship, we're talking about the quality of a relationship and not just the fact that we want a relationship. We always have a relationship, always. Okay. And the deeper the relationship, okay, and the unavailability of the person we have it with, that's when it becomes very, very painful, very painful. All right. And so now we have this thing we call degrees of attachment. So we're going to kind of just go down through this really quick. Degrees of attachment. Now remember, let's go back to the little baby. Let's go back to the little baby. You know, not 3 months, 4 months, whatever, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months. There is a degree of dependency of this child on the caregiver. In most cases, it is the mother. Not in all cases, but in most cases, when this child is even as young as they are, it is a matter of, excuse me, thank you. It is a matter of the child being dependent on the mother or the major caregiver. And again, when that person is not there, so that the baby can refuel. When your spouse, when your significant other is not available to you, so you can refuel. When you call your significant other, we're talking about dependency. I am depending on this person to be available to me. This is not control, by the way. It's not control. I'm saying, listen, I have integrated you so much into my life, there is a certain sense of dependency. This is not dependency where you feel like they put a wet blanket over you and you can't breathe. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not going to that degree. But what I am saying here is that there is this healthy dependency. Let me call that a healthy dependency that people have on each other. And again, children, they have that. And then it grows into what we call this interdependency. All right. Interdependency between, say, I'm going to use the mother again, the child, between the mother and the child. Interdependency. The child is dependent on mother to be available to satisfy all its needs, safety, food, just whatever. The mother is dependent on herself being available and being healthy, dependent on herself to be the best mother biologically, psychologically, spiritually, socially, every which way, so that she can be available to pass all of those good characteristics onto her child or children. Okay, so there's this interdependency. And a test of interdependency is when this child is sick and is not available to play, then you see fear and anguish comes into not just the mother, but it can come into the entire family structure. It says, and then there is this independency and self-sufficiency and autonomy. And here is the other piece to this. As parents, we're not talking about grief just along with death. We're talking about as parents, when we do a good job, and most of us, if not all of us, do an amazing job of raising our children. And here is the paradox: we raise our children to be successful and to do all these things and, do well in school, academically, physically, in sports, socially, do well at church. We do all of these things. We raise our children to be really good. And, and they graduate high school and time for college. And then all of a sudden, one day, those footsteps that used to come down the stairs or come down the hallway, or that person used to eat all your food out of the refrigerator in the kitchen, or can I borrow your car? Or can I get some money? All of a sudden, all of that is gone. They have now graduated and they are going to college. And so now they have autonomy, but it leaves a hole in your life. A hole in your life, all because you did a great job raising your children or that child. So keep it in mind. And maybe, I don't know, but if not you, if you've passed that age, pass it on to your children and grandchildren who are about to have children. But listen, when they do a good job of raising their children, they are really doing a good job to get to this place of the emptiness syndrome. The emptiness syndrome is a time of chaos for some people, loneliness for some people. I got news for you. The day your child was born and you took that little child into your arm and making sure that everything was great for your child, you was on your way to the emptiness syndrome. It's just going to take you 18 years, and you didn't think you were on the way to this emptiness syndrome. It didn't just start when they walked out the door and say, bye, mom, college, I'll call you if I need money. I'll definitely call you. That's not when the emptiness syndrome started. It started when you started taking care of your children, that child, and you did such a wonderful job of caretaking and providing and making sure that all of their wants and needs, their needs more than their wants, were supplied. When you do that, you are preparing yourself to go through grief when they're gone. Go through the act, experiencing grief when they're not available. And some people just don't walk down that road until they get to that place. They bump into this grief thing. They bump into it and say, oh my goodness, my child is leaving next week or next month. Preparation for loss is very important. Preparation for separation is very important. We're talking grief work here, We're talking about what you really need to do. And the more you enjoy that child, the greater the loss is going to be. The tighter and the deeper the relationship with anybody, and when they're not available, the greater the pain, the greater the loss. So when they get autonomy and they're gone, we're going through grief. Even when these human states, experiences are achieved, there will likely be some degree of dependency and attachment. So they're not gone for good. There will always be some level of dependency. I got to call my dad, got to call my mom. I'm depending on them to be there. Why? So I can hear their voice. When I hear their voice, I get a different feeling when I hear their voice. When I call them and I don't get them, I have to then go through some feeling of mild or whatever it might be, feeling of separation and maybe some anxiety. Why? Because I really wanted to talk to them about something that's important, like right now. So now I'm going through their unavailability, and because of that, I begin to feel the way I don't want to feel. So now I'm becoming detached from myself. And when I become detached from myself, I'm going through my own pain. All right, so we have degrees of detachment. We're going to move on now to another slide. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. The age of the unavailable person. What is the age of the person that is unavailable? You might ask, why is that important? It is very important, especially when we're talking about children. Well, as a matter of fact, it goes along the entire continuum. Okay. The age of this person is very important because it dictates their place in your life. It does. What they can do or cannot do for you. So the age of the person, and the more, so here it is. You want to see a flip? I'm going to do a flip. When mother and father were young and taking care of the children, then they get to be 65, 75, 80. Along the way, all kinds of ailments in the body, creaky joints, and all kinds of other things, and so they become unavailable. Why? Because the history is still very clear about, man, I remember how we used to do this. Memories coming back. Remember, now we talk about this grieving is not just about the fact that the person is not there. Memory, we grieve the unavailability of good memories. And because we invested so much in the person, the part we invested of ourselves, we invested in them, is no longer available to us. So we are grieving them and grieving ourselves, the unavailability of them and the unavailability of ourselves all at the same time. So the age of the unavailable person is also something to consider. Are they aged? Are they so young? That they can fulfill. Desiree, thank you. In preparing now mentally and emotionally for 2026, when my daughter goes off to school, yes, Desiree. Yes, yes, yes. Please do not wait, because you will be thrown into all kinds of disarray if you do that. Prepare not just what you're going to do, not just where they're going to go to school, not just how far they're going to go, not how much money. It's not, the point here is this: Desiree needs to be prepared so that when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't sleep, and your child your daughter is going off to school, make sure that you, if you're a praying person, you pray up your child, pray up yourself for inner strength to be able to go through this thing here. And if your daughter, Desiree, is going off, since your daughter is going off to school, Desiree, let me say this again. It is because you tapped into the capacity and the ability of your daughter to do so well that she is able to go off to school and continue your legacy in her life. So you have done a wonderful job, but in the end, there are some painful spots above that. Painful spots earlier on in her life when she didn't do like you wanted her to do. Painful spots when she has done what you wanted her to do, and so now she is about to go and become independent from you. So now, as a mother, at whatever age, the age of the grieving person, the length of the association. How long was this association for? How long did you know this person for? And sometimes when the person's not available, if they become deceased, some people will say, man, I just wish we had more time together. I just wish we really did. So now the length of the association comes into play, and when you think of all the good times that you had, some people have told me, said, man, I wish we had done more of that. I wish I had taken the time to do more of that. So the length of the association and the quality and the depth of the relationship in the association is very, very important. We're talking about attachment, as not as a subset of grief, but as a very important part of why we grieve the way we grieve. Okay, the length of the association. And then there's the quality. What does it look like? What does it feel like? It doesn't have to be long to be qualitatively satisfying. It doesn't have to be. The quality of something can be really short. It can be long. It can be, it's a variable. And so however it impacts you, it does. And I want to say this here, that when it comes down to grief, please, 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 don't tell somebody how to grieve. And be careful of how much you listen to people who tell you how to grieve. Well, you need to just get over it. What? That's not how grief. It took you time to get into this grief. It's going to take you time to come out of this grief. When me and my brother, who was 2 years older than me, when we were about, young kids, 10, 12, he's a couple of years older than me. We used to go to, we thought we were smart, and we would say things like to all the other kids, and, that if it took a man 2 days to walk into the middle of a forest, how long would it take him to come out? We didn't think about terrain. We go, of course, it's going to take you 2 days to come out. Well, there's terrains and things that when you're going in, the coming out may not be so fast. And so it is with the development of relationships. It might take you a specific time frame to develop the quality and depth of a relationship that you've developed. Okay, but coming out of it, okay, if you come out of this thing over a normal length of through a normal process, it can take you a long time too. But some people, unfortunately, the person, they meet their demise and they're not here physically. But it does not stop you from going through the desert, the forest, and walking your way back out through the forest. And every time you walk your way back out, and something about walking into this relationship, coming out of this relationship, you meet things, anniversaries along the way that remind you, it sends you into sadness and or depression. So yes, it is there. It is there. All right. So the age of the person, the quality, the length of the association, and the quality of the association, these things are absolutely important for you to deal with. So we're going to go on to the next slide now and see what else we have coming up here. Okay, Ellen G. Okay. Is cumulative grief processed the same way as a single grieving episode? Thank you, Ellen. Cumulative grief. What does Ellen mean by cumulative grief? Ellen means by cumulative, from what my understanding of cumulative grief is when you have several grief, losses, disturbances, keep on doing. It's almost like who is it? I think it's one of those burger places. I think it's Burger King. They call it Whopper. They stack it and stack it and stack it like this. When you have all this stuff inside of the bread now becomes your boundary, your capacity to handle this grief, this stress, this loss, and all of these losses are packed in between two pieces of bun, and it's in there and it's locked in there. But I'm using that as a metaphor. But emotionally now, you don't have a bun like that. Okay, what you do is you have your subconscious, and you put it down inside of there, and somehow you got to go in and systematically take pieces out. And there are some things you don't want to have to deal with. But cumulative grief. So let me put it this way: it's easier to deal with one huge tragedy, not the worst thing on the planet, one huge tragedy. Why? Because your mind is only going to focus in one direction, on one thing. But if you have cumulative grief, even though they may be, grief that is not very earth shaking for you, may not be. very earth-shaking for you. But you have several of these small losses and interruptions in what would otherwise be, your homeostasis, your balance. When you've had several of those and they kind of stack on this, what happens here is that one of the difficult things about that is this: that before you can work through one, another one has happened. So you stack that on top. Now you're focused on this one here, which now means that you're not focusing so much on the first one. And so now it's a matter of you have competing interests going on here now. And then before you can, and then you're beginning to work these things through and work them through, and then something else happens. You didn't work through the first one. It's still very much a part of your consciousness. You didn't work through the second one. And now you got a third one. So let me tell you what happens here. And so now, and we all go through this. You got to be careful. So this is my phone. It's my phone. It's my phone. That phone only has so much hard drive. We have, I'm going to tell you this again. We have what I call is our emotional hard drive. And every time we have we have an experience that is painful, if we can't deal with them because there's so much, and even when we have one that is tumultuous, okay, we tend to, like we do, my phone, we put things up in the iCloud. We have all these things in the iCloud, things that we know are there, but they are not in, we don't want them in our consciousness, but when we want it, we'll go up and get it. And so we'll do that same thing with our emotional iCloud. We tend to put many of our losses and displeasures in our emotional iClouds, okay? And they are there, they're not going anywhere, but like Apple iCloud or Google iCloud, they're up there somewhere. And if you lose an app and then you go and you want to restore the app, you want to buy the app again or load the app again, you see this is a cloud thing. And all you got to do is go in and get it out the cloud. And so yes, cumulative grief can be very, very painful because it takes your emotions in several directions, because the cause of each grief is different every time, no matter if it's the same thing, but the experience of each grief is going to be the same. So one large grief is easier because you can stay focused as opposed to several. Okay. All right. Quality. All right. So let's go on here. The onset of the associated grief. So now let's take a look at the cause. Let's take a look at the cause of this grief. And I'm not going to go deep into these because there are several I need to do. So that there's a cause. There is a cause for the grief. The cause of the grief is very important for us to consider when we're looking at grief. As a matter of fact, all grief, as far as I know, is unwanted. The cause of all grief is unwanted. So the cause of something is, and the reason, they are different, the cause and the reason for it. So the cause, of your car, the cause of somebody having a car wreck, it might be because a tractor trailer is coming at me, and so I had to swerve, shift out the way, and I'm just using this, it's it's probably a bad idea, but you run off the road and you blow your tire. Everything else is fine. Everybody else is fine, but you blow your tire. So the cause is there's a big semi coming at me while I blew my tire. That maybe run off the road, and the reason I got this flat is because I ran over some stuff, glass or whatever it is, that tore my tire. So the cause of a loss, or the cause of having to go through grief, it's not the same as the reason. It may not make a whole lot of difference when this person, but it is important for you to understand Very important. And so the meaning, of course, we know what the meaning of of the grief is, because we just talked about what it means, and it's normally really comes down to the degree of the degree of attachment, degree of unavailability, and the degree of loss and pain that's associated with that. And so here's another one. Expectation of the loss. Is the loss expected as opposed to not expected? We've dealt with some of the not expected. Is the loss expected? Is somebody slowly losing their health? It is not expected. But at some point, we will lose that loved one. And I think it was her name Desiree, the person who asked about, said she was losing her daughter was going to college. That is that also is an expectation of a loss. And we call these anticipatory grief. We anticipate a grief. Anticipatory grief. We know it's coming. We know it's coming. We know it's coming. Sometimes we know when, sometimes we don't know when, as in a health issue. But we know that it's coming. All right. But we don't have a pinpoint on that. And the other thing about not having a pinpoint on some of these anticipatory grief is that it kind of hold us at bay. We don't know how to behave under certain circumstances. And it can be very painful because we're going through something that we don't want to go through, but we don't know how long we're going to go through it. But it is anticipated, and then it happened. So anticipatory grief, it comes with its own set of pain, waiting for it to happen, and then it happened. So you move away from anticipatory grief to the acting out of, now I'm going to the grief of the reality of the loss. And so listen, sometimes a desire for the death of a loved one. I've heard people say to me, listen, it is so painful watching so-and-so in this state where they can't help themselves. We know they are going to die, but we just don't know. And they're in so much pain. We got to load them up with pain medication. We got to do all of these things here, and so this person, I just wish they would just go ahead and die. I just wish the doctor would stop giving them medication. I just want them to go and die peacefully. Why? And I say, why? It's because it's killing me just watching them go through that. So you understand how that kind of a grief is very, very real, just watching. And so some people say, but am I wrong to want this person to die because it's hard on me? And I'm saying, I can't answer that question. I cannot answer that question. Why? Because the quality of because all relationships are qualitative. Why? Because, and if they don't settle that, whether or not they're right or wrong, okay, then guilt will eat you alive, or can eat you alive. Prolong the cessation of prolonged and ongoing pain. So that is a kind of a crucial one, and a lot of people wish that they would not have to go through that. But sometimes they're saying, "Listen, I just want some peace in my life," and that they're not going to make it, and they're just forcing them to stay alive, and so So some people have a DNR, excuse me, DNR. Don't resuscitate. Just don't do that. But why? Because they put that in their will just so that the family members don't have to go through prolonged grief and pain. All right, history of grief. I think I might have another here, and we're gonna shut it down in just a minute. Okay, the age of the unavailable person, desire for okay, I think that might be it, because we just went down through this here. We just went down through this. Okay, it says, does any of the previous variables really matter when a person is going through the sting of loss and pain? And the answer is yes. And this is the last slide. The answer is absolutely yes. Does anything that I've talked about really matters when a person is going through the sting of loss and pain? The answer is absolutely yes, it matters. Here's why it matters. Each one can create or improve the capacity of the symptom sharer. Now, remember, there is the symptom sharer, those of us that are looking on and are supporting the person who is really in it. We are called the symptom sharer. So it's important when we understand all of the other things that I've talked about, we can put it in context. Okay, we can understand it in a context, the context of the loss and the quality of the pain. And what that will do, directing the mode and quality of my intervention in the life of the symptom bearer. There are those who are actively the going through the loss and the pain. Okay, if I tap into them and understand some of the things that we talked about earlier on in this session here today, it will allow me to approach the situation and approach people in a way that will not be caustic to them. It will show understanding to them. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just be there and say nothing. Okay, because and for sure, don't say, girl or dude, man, I know exactly what you're going through because last year I had such and such, which is exactly the same. No, 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 no. Every loss that you suffer is different. Therefore, every people will see losses as as something else. It is their experience. So when we understand the attachment, detachment, interpersonal, intrapersonal, all of these things that we talked about up top, it will posture you or put you in a position to say, this is how I need to relate to this person who is going, which is the symptom bearer, who is going through the loss and the pain and the grief. And me, I'm trying to share in their grief. And so this is how I do this. And that, these are some of the emotional effects of grief. Very, very important for us to understand that. Otherwise, if we don't understand that, we might be just adding to their load and their pain when they expect us to be their burden bearer, to bear them up. Okay, so thank you so much. I'm hoping that this set here tonight was helpful to you. It's it's not the most favorite topic that we like to talk about, but we have to do that. It's a part of reality, just like talking about forgiveness. There's a whole piece on forgiveness that at some point I'm going to do with you also. But for now, just know that when you have lost somebody or something or an experience that was significant, please grieve appropriately. I'm not saying that you got to jump into some grief stuff if you're not there or if it was not that close. But if necessary, please make sure that your grieving is appropriate. And the best way to grieve is to do self-care. You take care of yourself. That is the most appropriate and best and most effective way to grieve is self-care. It doesn't mean that you lock people out of your experience and you become a hermit. That's not what I'm saying. But knowing yourself from here all the way down, knowing who you are, and to the point where you can say, because of who I am, I can do this. Because of who I am, I can do that. Because of who I am, I will not allow that, or I will allow this. Take full care of yourself when it comes to this, because after all, grieving is an experience of a loss. You cannot have an experience but once. and no one can have your experience of you. And you can do the very best you can. Use your best good English, bad English, whatever English you want to use, or whatever language you want to use. You can use that, okay, to express what you're feeling, and they will never feel what you're feeling. And when you express what you're feeling after you felt it, okay, you're just having an experience of your experience. You're just having an experience of your experience. And so you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So I thank you so much. It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And please, like it, share, and subscribe and follow. Please do that. Share it, because I think this is a very important piece as we, all of us have gone through losses, and especially the anticipatory piece. Like, follow, share, and subscribe. A lot of people don't talk about anticipating grief. And it can be just as earth-shaking as going through the grief when you are at that point. Okay, like, follow, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be a part of one of the upcoming shows, please contact my team at drkitspeaks@gmail.com, and we will get you on. Your story is the only story. If you have not told your story, it remains one of the stories. Excuse me. Wow. It remains one of the stories that will be untold until you tell it. Okay, so make sure you tell your story. It is very important. Everybody that tells a story is giving somebody who listens to your story an opportunity to learn and grow. All right, so don't rob people of that. Tell your story. Come on, Dr. Kit Speaks with the Shake Up, and tell your story and let people come to see a different part of themselves, because they're going to reframe their lives because of your story. Okay, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful. And I thank those of you who shared your comments. I really do thank you for that. That's the lifeblood, because it gives me something else. Give those of us on here, when I have a guest, something else to segue into, to move into, and to talk, to embellish and to make sure that your concerns or your suggestions are being answered. Okay, so thank you so much. God bless you. We will see you again the same time, 6 p.m. on Monday. The Shake Up with Dr. Kit. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful evening. Be blessed. Have a good night. Bye-bye.